Good morning, everybody. This is Walk the Dog with Riot Mort. It is Wednesday. It is rainy and wet, and about 5:45 a.m. and I'm tired. I participated in an optional Riot thing yesterday, and it was fun. It was. I'm glad I did, but it's also one of those things that your entire evening goes away, and you're like, oh, it's already time for bed. So much for an evening. And then your wife is like, hey, I know you said you were going to do this, but I miss you. And it's like, oh, yeah, I know. So I owe my wife some attention later. Thankfully, she's very understanding. And as long as I give her notice on these things, it's like, hey, just so you know, this week I'm going to be busy with this thing. And she's like, that's cool. But also, you owe me, so I owe her. But yeah, otherwise, the only other thing I wanted to talk about real quick in the morning is oftentimes we get people who have really good intentions who want to help give feedback on the state of the meta or the state of the game. And the way they get this information though is it's like, for example, it's just an example, but it's like, hey, just so you guys know, the radiant item balance is off. You need to buff a couple of the radiant items. And, well, how do they know that? Well, they went to tactics.tools and they sorted by win rate and pointed out the ones at the bottom. It's like, thank you. We also have access to these websites, right? This is not really amazing insight that you're providing us. Your ability to look at a website is not particularly useful. And again, I say that because again, they come from a good place. It's like they just want to help make the game better. But also it's like, yeah, we know. We're working. There's another patch, and we also can look at the website. What is more helpful is actual insights from players who play the game and have interesting experiences and want to talk about those experiences. Not players who looked at a table or looked at some stat websites, because we have access to those same things too, So it's just one of those things that the more it happens, the more I'm just like, guys, just stop, please. But you can't because, again, they come from a good place and you're glad that they enjoy the game and you're glad they want to make it better. But it's sort of like, the Office Space thing where it's like, don't forget to put cover sheets on your TPS reports, and he gets told 4 times. It's like, yeah, don't forget to go to the radiant item balance and sort and make sure you buff the ones that are like, yeah, I know. Thanks. So, anyway, this is totally not related to anything that happened yesterday. Okay. First question. Do you think we will ever repeat sets? So this question, the person was sort of asking, let's say we get all the way to set 50. Do you ever think we will repeat sets and just be like, you know what, screw it, back to the original? And the answer to this is no, but yes. No, but yes. Do I ever think we're going to be like, this is the exact same set, and yeah, we'll modernize it? No, I don't think we will, actually. I think that's what revivals are for. Revivals are already kind of that. And the idea that we would take the exact same sort of set with the exact same champions and even just modernized, I don't think so, right? Let's say, I don't know, let's pick set 3, Galaxies. And do I ever think set 27 could be Galaxies 2? Or even just just Galaxies itself again with the same champions and traits, but slightly updated? No, I don't think so. I really don't. But what I do think can and already has happened is we will use similar themes with a very different spin. And some examples of this kind of already happening are, set 1 was Runeterra based, set 9 is Runeterra based. And set 16, if you believe the roadmap, looks to be Runeterra based. So, that's Runeterra. But even ignoring Runeterra, it's set 6 was kind of arcane themed. Set 13 was kind of arcane themed, right? And I feel like that's what you'll see It's like, will Star Guardian ever be in another set? Probably, But like, let's say we wanted to go back to elements and do an elements thing again. Would it be exactly elements? No, but would it be a completely different spin with some of the same skin lines? Yeah, for sure, right? Like, that's, I think, what you're more likely to see, right? So it's like, if anything, imagine you pick a random set theme, like here, we'll pick randomly set 5. Set 5 is light and dark, the battle of good and evil, reckoning. And now it's set 25, and it's time to do a different battle of good and evil. I think it would end up as a very different set, but still use some of those same themes, some of those same skins. I could totally see a set that has Dawnbringer and Nightbringer in it again. Sure, absolutely, but I think a lot of the surrounding pieces would end up being quite a bit different. And so, but do you call that like reusing the set? Not really. But the biggest limiter here is not like ideas. It's actually just skins. It's League of Legends skin lines, right? Like, so many times we already get why isn't this champion in the game more often? It's like, well, because they don't have a ton of skins, right? We were literally just talking about this yesterday. Someone was like, why don't we use Amumu more? It's like, with what skins? Because a lot of Amumu skins are from the like 2009, 2010 era. And it's like, how many different ways can you have a Pharaoh Emo in a set, or Pharaoh Amumu, or Emo Amumu in a set? Because there aren't really a lot of amazing Amumu skins. And so that ends up being one of our limiters. Oftentimes we end up using newer champions and newer skin lines just because they're higher quality. Cho'Gath is another really good example here, where Cho'Gath is a very good shape and unique shape for TFT, but his character model quality is so old. And then combined with the fact that like he's only got a couple moves and his skin lines are pretty whatever. So it's like, you can only really use Cho so many different ways. And that's why I think most of the Chos we've used are just void Cho, because you need that purple monster, which isn't bad, but so yeah, TLDR here. I don't think we'll ever directly repeat sets, but I definitely think parts of sets will get reused, reimagined, and reshaped into different things, and they already have. So you'll probably see more of that. Now, I'm trying to think directly in the future, is there any of that? I mean, well, again, we just said, if 16's Runeterra based, then there's some of that for sure. So, I guess Runeterra is like a weird exception too, because it's like, well, of course we're going to use base Runeterra. People like League of Legends champions and base Runeterra. So, but yeah, so there you go. All right, next question. Do you think people are afraid to innovate more in a team game? And so what this person was asking about is like, hey, if I'm playing a League of Legends, 5v5 team game, I feel like I need to pick the mid laner I'm comfortable with so that I don't randomly disappoint the team and get flamed for doing something terrible. And, so because of that, I only play mid lane Malzahar. But in TFT, if I just want to see, if like I hear about this new Graves build and I just want to log on and try this Graves build, no harm, no foul. Worst case, I get 8th place. Okay. But no one's going to yell at me and flame me for trying things. Do I think this is an issue? The short answer is yes, but the longer answer is, what could you do about it, right? Like, there's like an interesting study here about the dynamics of people. But yeah, when you're playing a solo game, doing actions that only affect yourself are easier. This is true. And even like ARAM, right? Like, or what was the new mode that came out recently? I forget the name of it now. Brawl, where you could pick your champion on that tiny map. Like, it takes a while to learn things, and people have expectations of you. And especially in a competitive game that's been out for a while. I look at like World of Warcraft, for example. And it's like, that game's been out so long that everyone's expectations of you is like, hey, here's this dungeon. You need to already be this item level, have ran it 10 times, and know everything about it. And it's like, how? So, yeah, I mean, I do think this is an issue. I do think this is a challenge for sure. I'm just not sure how you'd solve it. Like, you know, infinite possibilities. You would do something like, you know, queue up by experience rating. And it's like, hey, I am picking a champion that I've never played before. And I want to play with other people who are picking a champion they've never played before. But the risk with something like that is you can only do something like that in a game that already has an extremely healthy player base, because you're splitting your queues already, right? It's like, think of it this way. If you have 100,000 people playing your game and you already say, okay, I only want to play with people who are playing at the same time as me, well, that might shrink it down to 30,000 players. And I only want to play with people who are the same skill level as me. Well, that's going to shrink it down to 8,000 players. And now I only want to play with people who are playing on the same experience level as the champions as me. That's going to lower it down to 2,000 players. And I only want to play with people who are willing to play a different role than me. Well, now you're down to maybe 1,000 players, right? Like, every search parameter you put on a queue lowers the amount of people you can play the game with. And if you don't have a ton of players, you would have a dead queue, right? And so those extra queue restrictions to try to make that happen would be really, really tough. You can actually see some of this in like the lesser played modes of games like League, but yeah, it's an interesting theory. Like, again, the statement you're saying is true, which is, yes, it is harder to innovate in team games. But again, I just don't know an action you could take to solve this. It's just human nature. So, not the most satisfying answer, I know, but I agree with your hypothesis. It is also one of the reasons why that I actually, you know, we talked about it in the 4v4 thing, where it's like, do I think 4v4 could work for most players? No, I don't. For one of this exact reasons, right? Like, it's my first time playing the Graves comp, guys, in the 4v4. Screw you, pick a comp you're familiar with. Stop forcing, you know, like, oh God. It'd be awful. So, yeah, it's a thing. All right, next question. What is the ideal patch cadence? Ooh, so this obviously comes up all the time, especially at the start of a set, where it's like, hey, we noticed this issue with the set. We think you should be patching it faster. Some of our most engaged players wish we could patch every day. Some of our players, you know, are like, you patch too much. We've talked about this before, that we sort of self-selected into people who like frequent patches, but frequent patches also mean you don't have time for the meta to develop. And lately, as we've gotten better at balance, when you hit these balanced states in the game, like 14.4, 14.5, set 13, things like that, you do see metas develop. And if you're patching all the time, you don't have time for that to happen. So the question is, what is the ideal balance frequency? Now, the person asked if I could just snap my fingers, because one of the things here that's the immediate blocker is how long it takes to ship a patch, right? Like, right now, we have to do all the QA process, the setting up process, like the localization for patch notes, et cetera, right? Like 14.6 is already locked. 14.6 comes out in, well, a week, but it was locked yesterday, so it's locked 8 days before the patch comes out. So even if I could patch, quote unquote, every day, that would mean 14.7 would have to start being locked like today, which, what are we going to know differently? Like, we need time to respond to 14.6. So that's under the current patch conditions. But let's assume for a second, for the sake of this exercise, that if I wanted to patch, I could do it on a 24-hour turnaround, okay? Let's assume that's possible. It's not, but let's assume it was. If I could patch and 24 hours later, everything could go out, how often would I want to patch? And I think the answer is about every 2 weeks for a standard patch, with exception cases for what I'll call themed patches. And here's how I would do it. A standard patch every 2 weeks would focus primarily on champs and traits. Champs and traits would happen every 2 weeks. Okay? But then, in addition, you could have patches that are just like, today it's Thursday and we're doing an augment patch. And in this augment patch, these 10 augments are getting buffed and nerfed. And then it's Sunday and you could go, hey, today is an item patch. And we're doing slight adjustments to the augments. Or to the items. But any of these smaller patches, I would say need to be done within the framework of 5%. You know, even the more I say this out loud, though, it's like, no, it could work. So the doubt in my head is like, nobody wants to play a game that's changing every other day. But if the changes are like, hey, this rare augment you see once every 50 games now has 3 less starting gold, that's not a big deal. That's not a big deal. But, yeah, man, the work involved, I keep going back to the work of like preparing all these patches. Because even though from a player perspective, you guys shouldn't care about the amount of work it takes, still is the dev cost time. It's like, do I want my team spending their time patching every single day? Probably not. I really don't. And I look at like the current meta, right? Like, if you look at the current meta, it's not perfect, right? Like, Echo needs buffs and Darius needs buffs and things like that. But do I really need to like rush that out there? I don't know. I don't think so. I guess what would really be good, I think, actually, is no, because man, TFT is such a hard game. Now you're getting me down the rabbit hole of like TFT is such a hard game to balance. And it's like, I want to look at a champion like Graves for a second. Like, you look at the Graves buff that we just did last patch, and it was barely anything. It was not that big a buff. And now it got people to play Graves and explore Graves, and now there's a Graves comp. You know? And it's like, we live on such thin margins that somebody in Lobby 2 was telling my team that, like, Zeri just needs a 1 to 2 AD buff. It's like, those are the margins we're on right now. It's like, the meta is not perfect because somebody needs 1 to 2 AD. And it's like, geez Louise. But again, the learning cost of like, if I literally shipped a patch right now that gave Zeri 2 AD, would that change the meta? Probably a little. Probably a little. You know. But then again, we can ship entire item reworks that don't really change the meta that much. Man, and then, okay. So we ship a Ginsu's rework, and everyone's worried that like Ginsu's is going to be way less fun. Way less fun. And we're like, nope. We made sure Ginsu's isn't way less fun. And now the complaint is, well, now Ginsu's is actually so good, you might never want to build Shojin because Ginsu's is just better Shojin. It's like, there's always, I don't know. The competitive player base will always find something that they feel like is an issue. And so chasing perfection is probably a fool's errand, because no matter what we do, like let's say hypothetically, we had buffed Shojin right now, then somebody would be like, well, now blue buff is, you know, because I've determined that Shojin is now better than blue buff, and now blue buff's unbuild. Like, yeah. So, you know, hilariously enough, I keep going back to it, and it's like, yeah, there'd be other things I'd love to try sometime of like different patch cadences and things like that. But the cold reality might just be that 2 weeks is correct. 2 weeks is correct. If we can get to a really balanced meta like 14.4, 14.5, 2 weeks is fine. It gives you time to play, learn, understand, play some tournaments in it, get used to it, and then new patch. So, yeah, even if I could snap my fingers, I'm not sure I'd want to patch faster other than like big outliers. Having the ability to sort of go, okay, yeah, Hollow Bow Zeri, right? Would I have loved to fix Hollow Bow Zeri the next day? Hell yeah. Right? Like that's the kind of thing. Okay. In fact, there's my patch cadence. Every 2 weeks for a standard patch, but the freedom, because right now micro patches are very costly and I get in trouble when we do them. But the ability to just be like, nope, I can fix really glaring issues. But like, again, to give you an idea, on live right now, there are no glaring issues. There is nothing on live right now that I think would be worth not waiting 2 weeks for. But first patch, or second patch, Hollow Bow Zeri, dear God, I would love to nuke that from orbit, you know? So, all right, next question. Would you consider a TFT clash? So the short answer to this is yeah. I think the idea of like being able to log on a Friday and go, hey guys, I'm just going to enter this fun little TFT tournament. I'm a platinum level player. That'd be really fun. It's like a short-term LP tournament, if you will. Like a cool version of this, I think, would be, imagine if you play like just again, short clash little thing. But every time you play a game, if you top 4, you move on to the next bracket. And if you don't, you're out. And, you know, it'd be like, cool. And it's like, how many games in a row can you top 4? And if you can top 4, we'll say 5 games in a row. Because a clash can't really be that long. That's already like 4 hours probably. If you top four 5 times in a row, you win and get some cool prizes. That'd be neat. Now again, that sounds cool. Is that worth spending an entire development team on to make the feature, set up the feature, use it, and everything else compared to everything else we could be doing? That's a much harder debate, right? Because what does that really provide, you know? In the worst scenario, you create a situation where you have players who only play Clash, and then they never play the game otherwise. So you're essentially hamstringing your own player base. In the best case scenario, cool. Players are playing, they're playing the game, and then they're excited for Clash. You get streamers kind of excited about it. Although streamers already play tournaments, so this wouldn't really be for them. So, I don't know. Like, it sounds cool in theory, and it'd be very fun. Just justifying the dev costs for it, I think, is really challenging. Now, to put your business hat on for a second, it's like, well, what if you charged to play for it? And it's like, well, yeah, maybe, but that's a whole other can of worms, you know? So, but again, the concept of playing TFT tournaments, very fun. In fact, one of the things I miss on my streams is when we would just run silly tournaments. I kind of wish we ran silly tournaments some more. Remember the Tom Kench Cup where everyone had to play the Tom Kench Legend? That was kind of fun. So, anyway, it's a cool idea. It's just the realities of dev costs, I think, are hard. I think if you look at League Clash, we get to learn a lot from them and how they did it and how much that cost them. And again, when I say cost, I mean time. I don't mean money. But, you know, and how hard it is to keep it running. But the people who love Clash really do. So, yeah, it'd be cool. All right, last question today. And this is a good one. What are your thoughts on the carousel? The carousel is something that was made all the way back in set 1. Shout outs to Jordan Anton, long time reference. He hasn't been on the team in 5 years. And the carousel's weird in that it's something that has been in the game since set 1, and frankly probably could be better. There are probably better things we could do at the carousel that serve similar purposes. But the problem is the things that the carousel does are important to keep, and we don't we need to keep those things, right? Like let's say straight up, you could literally just delete the carousel, and instead everyone just got a component anvil at x-4, right? Everyone just gets a component anvil at x-4. Would the game be quote unquote better? Well, no, actually. Like, yes, it'd be faster, but one of the big things that'd be missing would be that loss streaking would definitely go down as a strategy, right? Like, the carousel provides a deep connection to loss streaking that actually opens up viable strategies in our game that don't require high rolling. A lot of mosquitoes out today. What I mean by that is, like, stage 2, the fact that you can loss streak, get an item that you want, right? Common thing was like blue buff for a while with Vexotech and Annie and stuff like that. So priority pick on a tier, priority pick on maybe 1 or 2 more gold if you get like a 3-cost unit, for being willing to trade some health, creates a sort of risk-reward dynamic that is very healthy for the game, and creates the strategic option at 2-1 where you can go, okay, I don't like my board, I think I'm in a bad situation, I'm going to play to turn this around on 3-2 or 3-5. And that's a healthy, deep thing. Whereas without that, it would just be, I should always be trying to win streak. And yes, I know it's a microscopic difference, right? But even just the ability to deny that first place player a good item so that they end up getting stuck with the cloaks and arm chains, and then the first place player doesn't have any offensive items and you can make a comeback, that's good for the game, right? And so whatever we replace carousel with would need to serve that same purpose, where it's creating incentive to loss streak at various points and creating a slight comeback mechanic, which isn't a low skill thing like rubber banding. It's actually a skillful decision that you can make around the game. So if we have to keep that, well, then we end up with like, okay, let's make up a fake thing. Let's imagine instead of a carousel, everyone stands in a line and nothing's spinning, and you just take turns one by one using your mouse to click on the unit you want and pick it. And it's like, would that be better? Yeah, sure, a little. Is that better enough to be worth changing something that's been in the game for 6 years? Probably not, right? When you're making a change in the game, there's 2 things you run up to. The first is called change aversion, which is, right, like someone might go, hey, this is not what I'm used to. This is rough. I'm going to quit playing the game. And so any change you make to the game is risky. I think the Ginsu's change kind of shows that, right? It's like, you're changing my favorite item, I'm going to quit, even if the item actually is better. Those initial reactions that we saw from Ginsu's are what we call change aversion. The second thing is that generally, if you're going to pay a dev cost to make this change, you need a return on that time that you've paid, right? And so the game, like, imagine you spend a month making this change on carousel. What you ship needs to make the game enough better than compared to something else you could have been doing with that month. And so in that carousel example I listed, where it's like, now everyone just clicks on a unit. Is the game that much better? No, probably not. Probably not. There's probably a lot of better things I could be doing with that month. And so I think that's the biggest challenge with the carousel, is coming up with something that serves a lot of the same purposes, but is better enough to warrant the cost. That's been the tricky part. Because there are definitely parts about the carousel I don't like, right? Like the fact that it's the one thing in the game that requires dexterity and movement. If people accidentally pick things on the carousel all the time, that's not good, right? Now, there are small quality of life things we could do for the carousel. Here's an example of something I think we should have done ages ago, but I'll call it out. I actually believe that on the carousel, on mobile or PC, instead of clicking where you want to move, you would click on the unit you want. So like, let's say you see a tier Jinx on the carousel. You right click the Jinx tier, it highlights, and then your character will run in a straight line to that, ignoring all other collision. So you just get the ability to straight line, run to it, right? And so this way on mobile, you don't have these accidental clicks. It's just like, click the thing you want, your character will run to it. If it gets picked up, click a different unit, run to it, no problem, right? That's a slight improvement. But even that, you know, is that really going to make that big a difference? A little. So I think it would make enough of a difference that personally I would ship that. But has that hit the priority bar? You know, and are there maybe better solves than that one? Maybe. I'll be honest, I can't say I've thought deeply about that potential thing, but that's also still the carousel, right? Like that's still the carousel, just we removed the chance of accidental pickups. Okay. But literally replacing the carousel with something else, it'd have to be an amazing idea that serves that same lost streak retaining purpose, which is tough. So for now, I think what I'll say is we kind of lucked into the fact that the carousel is good for the game. It serves a purpose. It's fine. We've actually, over the years, removed a lot of the variance in the carousel. You know, every carousel now basically has one of every component. So, because we even finally got rid of the stage 3 random one. So, yeah, I don't know. TLDR, probably not going anywhere for a while. All right, it's 31 minutes in. I answered a lot of questions today. I did good. Today's playtest and meetings, the optional thing, generally good stuff. So should be a standard day. Standard day of work. It's Wednesday. Soon it will be Friday. Oh, Friday is the Magic pre-release. I get to do the Final Fantasy Magic pre-release. That'll be fun. And then Saturday I'll see you guys for streaming, which will be great. So, all right, that's going to do it for me. I'm going to finish my walk, get out of the rain, all that fun stuff. Until next time, take it easy.